Hello. Nearly as long as passwords have been around, they've been a significant source of security concern. 81% of security incidents happen due to stolen or weak passwords. For this reason, access and identity management have become a priority for many organizations. Today, I'm going to talk about conditional access, its advantages, and how it works with multi-factor authentication, or MFA. So stay tuned. Hello, I am Michael Kinnett, CEO and founder of Eternal Networks. And every Friday at 1 p.m. on our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and my personal LinkedIn, I go live to discuss the latest in cybersecurity and technology news that might affect you and your business. At the end of our live session, I'll also answer questions from the audience. So if you have any tech or cybersecurity related questions, make sure to have them ready. Go ahead and send them in the comments and I'll cover them at the end. First, before I get into our topic, I do want to talk about something from the news. Microsoft published some information regarding a phishing attack that they've been seeing targeting accountants and other tax professionals. So tax day is fast approaching. Many people are scrambling to get their tax information into their accountants so they can either file or do an extension. Tax day is next Tuesday, and Microsoft just published this information on an ongoing phishing attack that they've been seeing that is targeting those accountants and other tax professionals. Just like, people are scrambling to send in their information, the accountants are receiving it, right? They're getting emails with their clients' information. And so that's exactly what this phishing attack is doing. It's targeting these tax professionals as they're expecting to receive emails with documents in it. So, and rather than just tell you about what Microsoft said and what's going on with this phishing attack, I'm going to actually show you some examples. So let me share my screen here. Make that a little bit bigger. All right, so this is a sample email. The criminals start out by sending an email that pretends to be a client of this tax professional, sending them documents to complete their tax return. So this example is one of those emails, right? And so you'll notice it says, "Hey, sorry, I apologize for not responding sooner. Our individual tax return should be simple. I believe you need these documents. Everything's attached with this password protected file, right? Here's how you can download it. Here's the password so you can access it. Let me know if you need anything," right? Looks pretty good, right? Not too bad. So if I was an accountant and I got this, I thought, I don't know this person, but maybe they're new. Let me download and see what they've got, and then we can figure it out. So that's where it starts, right? Once you click the link and download it and open that password protected zip file, then this is what they see, right? So the files appear to be PDF files, right? Looking at these files, right? Here's two files. There it is, right? There's that little PDF icon. You can see it at the bottom left there as well. And so it looks legitimate. Well, guess what? It's not, because if you look closer, it's actually a shortcut. It's not a PDF file. It's a shortcut. It's a Windows shortcut. And when you click on it, it's going to execute a PowerShell command that downloads a malicious payload and then executes that downloaded file. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Part of that script that runs, that shortcut, also downloads a decoy PDF file and opens it in Edge. So that person that downloaded the file, that clicked the link and did this and opened it, they think everything's fine because they see a PDF in Edge. So they're not suspicious that anything malicious has happened. Well, the end result is that a RAT, or a remote access Trojan, gets installed on the computer, giving the criminal access to that computer and the company network. And from that entry point, they can initiate other internal attacks, leading to data stealing, other malware being spread, and potentially ransomware being deployed on those systems. So if you're a tax professional, it's important to be aware of this, right? To be very conscientious of what you're downloading, what you're clicking on. If something doesn't look right, ask your IT professional to verify it, and just be aware. And this is just a good practice for anybody, but especially for those tax professionals at this time of year. Let me go ahead and stop my screen share here. Then we can go on with our topic. So the topic for today is conditional access, right? And first, you probably are wondering, well, what the heck is conditional access? And I'll talk about that and explain it. First, I wanted to share some facts related to insider threats. And conditional access can help mitigate some of these risks of insider threats, which we'll be talking about more on our live webinar next week. So here's some stats. 61% of workers use the same password for multiple platforms. Now, if you're watching this live or after the fact, you're probably guilty of that as well. You 61% use the same password, right? It's just a fact. 43% have shared their passwords with others. I hate to say this, we have clients that no matter how many times we tell them this, they're still doing this, right? They're still using the same password everywhere and sharing passwords and doing these things. And so this is a risk, right? The more places you use the same password, the more exposed you are if that one password gets breached. So what about conditional access, right? What's the topic we're talking about today? Conditional access can help fix some of these issues. What is conditional access? You right? Conditional access, it's also called contextual access. And it's a method of controlling users' access to systems, to data, right, to company assets. You can think of it as several if-then statements, meaning if this thing is present, then do this or allow this to happen. For example, conditional access allows you to set a rule that would state the following. If a user is logging in from outside of the country, then require them to provide a one-time passcode or MFA, a multi-factor authentication. Conditional access allows you to add many conditions to the process of user accounts to a user access to this system. It's typically used alongside with MFA, and it's used to improve access security without unnecessarily inconveniencing users. So there's many different factors that you can use as part of your conditional access. One of them is IP address. I'll give you an example, right? If your company has a static IP address on the internet, right? So if your internet provider said, this is your IP address to access the internet, then you can create a conditional access rule that says, if my users are logging in to Microsoft 365, for example, from this IP address, don't require their MFA code. Just let them have it with a username and password because they're coming from a trusted location. Another factor that you can use is geographic location, right? I gave the example, if they're outside of the United States or outside of whatever country that you expect them to log in, require MFA. Time of day, you can say, hey, if they're logging in outside of normal business hours, require MFA. I need to verify who they are. The device used is another one, right? If they're logging in from a device that you don't recognize. The role or group that the user belongs to. These are just some of the areas that you can use to apply conditional access rules for. And some of the benefits of implementing it include improving security. And it allows you more flexibility in challenging user legitimacy. It doesn't just grant them access, if they have a username and a password, because, the reality is there's passwords for sale on the dark web. There's passwords exposed in breaches every day. And if a criminal gets a hold of that, do you want them to just be able to log in? So instead, the user needs to meet certain requirements, right? Username and password, and then they need to either be from a trusted location, a trusted device, part of a combination of any of those, right? And if it doesn't apply to that, then require additional steps to verify that user access. It can be used to block access from outside of the country where no employees are. So in our organization, I have a conditional access rule set up that says if a user logs in outside of the United States and from an untrusted device or an unknown device, lock that user account, block sign-ins, and sign them out wherever they're signed in. Because if somebody was able to log in outside of the country on an unknown device, they potentially are now in the system. Potentially you've had a breach. Excuse me. And so you want to be able to mitigate that as fast as possible, and you can do that through conditional access. So, and that's one way that you can automate your access management process is by creating these rules. the system takes over. It automates the monitoring and response in some of those cases, using those contextual factors to take the appropriate actions. It reduces the burden on your administrative IT team, and also make sure nothing falls between the cracks, right? Because it's reliable. The system says if this, then that. It doesn't matter time of day. It doesn't matter who it is or where it's coming from or anything like that. It's going to apply the same rules every time through that logic, through that computer system. And so no matter the time, the system's working for you to provide that layer of security. It also, it's not only for blocking access. This is some probably less commonly known or less commonly used rules for access or conditional access, but you can minimize what they have access to as well. So one example of this might be a user logs in from their home computer, right? And your conditional access says, okay, if they're logging in outside of the office from an unknown device, require MFA. It's in the United States, so we're still going to allow it. So they do username, password, add their MFA code, and they're in. Well, do you want to allow them just complete access to everything as if they were on a trusted device? Maybe not. So you could further restrict it and say, okay, they've verified who they are, but we don't know the device, we don't trust the device. So they only have read access to the system and to the files. View only, right? They can't download the files, they can't manipulate the files. And the reason for this is, you may have an employee that goes in and logs in from home or from a personal device and wants to download company data because they're getting ready to bail, right? And to go and work somewhere else or start their own business. And so it's a way of protecting those company assets and company data as well. The last thing I want to talk about is it can improve the customer login experience. Study shows that as high as 67% of businesses don't use multi-factor authentication. Now that's despite the fact that that's been recommended for years now as one of the best and most effective methods to stop credential breaches. And yet a lot of companies are not implementing it because it adds a layer of complexity to the user login experience. So using this conditional access can help improve that and make it easier to implement, because as I mentioned a minute ago, you can allow them to bypass MFA if they're logging in from trusted devices and trusted locations. And so it can help simplify that and make that much easier to implement. It can help align with best security practices of zero trust, using the rule of least privilege, making sure that you're only granting the lowest level of access needed for them to do their work. There are other benefits of conditional access, but I feel like I've taken enough time today on my soapbox talking about it. If you have any other questions about it, though, please reach out to me and let me know. I'd love to maybe go more in depth with this if anybody does have questions. As I mentioned earlier, we do have an upcoming webinar next week. We're going to be talking about insider threats, which are a growing concern in cybersecurity. And insider threats occur when an employee or trusted individual within an organization intentionally or unintentionally causes a security breach. These individuals often have privileged access to sensitive data network systems, making them particularly dangerous. And so for our upcoming webinar, we're going to be joined by Lindsay of Breach Secure Now. We're going to be exploring and talking about different ways to prevent insider attacks and how to increase companies' cyber resilience through implementation of secure access controls, employee education and training, and then how to monitor and detect any threats that do arise. So we're going to be going live next Thursday, April 20th at 1 p.m. And for the first time, we're actually going to be holding this webinar publicly as a live stream across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. No need to register, no need to provide us your email address or information. Just save the date. Next Thursday, the 20th at 1 p.m. Throw it on your calendar and join us live on one of those platforms. I don't see any questions or comments that have came in. So if any of you do have any that are watching this after the fact, you can always direct message me on your social media platform of choice or contact us through our website at itnet.works. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week on our webinar. Have a good one.